Morning everybody, and welcome to our last day of our MCA review. We are going to be doing the Pythagorean Theorem today. Now Pythagorean Theorem has to deal with right triangles. So our triangles have to have a right angle in them. Now each triangle is going to have two legs. Those are the sides that form a right angle. Then the hypotenuse is the long angle for a triangle. So it's called a hypotenuse. So the Pythagorean theorem, well, that is a formula. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. A and b are the legs. C is the hypotenuse. So in this case over here, we have a equals 3, b equals 4. They're saying that 3 squared, which is 9, plus 4 squared, which is 16, equals the hypotenuse, which is 5, or 5 squared, which is 25. Now 9 plus 16, that does equal 25. So 25 equals 25. So if you take a look at your formula sheet, we're looking at the Pythagorean theorem, the top one. I want you to add this triangle next to the Pythagorean theorem there. So it's a right triangle, A, B, and C. Make sure your A and B's are your legs, the hypotenuse is your C. Now if you need another visual here, we have all these squares. In the small square, that has 9 different little squares in it. The bottom one has 16. So just like it was before, 9 plus 16, well this one has 25 in it. 9 plus 16 is going to equal 25. So let's take a look at this one. Find the unknown length. Round to the nearest hundredth if necessary. So we may need calculators for these problems. So first I'm going to say that A is going to be 15 and B is going to be 8. Now it doesn't matter which one you pick as A or which one you pick as B, as long as you're picking the legs. So we are trying to find C. So we have 15 squared plus 8 squared equals c squared. So how we do this then is we find what 15 squared is. So that's 15 times 15. And we get 225 plus 64, because that's 8 squared, equals c squared. Then we do 225 plus 64 and get 289 equals c squared. Now we need to get c by itself. So what we got to do is do the opposite of squared. And the opposite of that is to find the square root. So if I find the square root of c squared, I also have to find the square root of 289. So square root of 289, well that's going to be 17. So c is going to equal 17 in this case. Next one, we know the C, and we know either the A or B. I'm going to say this is our B. So we don't know A, we're trying to find A. So we have A squared plus B squared, which is 31.1 squared, equals 43.7 squared. So now we solve that, so, well, not D, we want A plus A squared plus 31.1 times 31.1 is going to equal 967.21 equals 43.7 times 43.7. That's going to equal 1,909.69. Now we got to solve for a squared. So what we're going to do is get a squared by itself. So I'm going to subtract 967.21 from both sides. So we get a squared equals 942.48. Now to find what a is, we have to square root a squared. And we get a equals the square root of 942.48 equals 30. Now we're going to round to the nearest hundredth, so 70. Alright, just some more practice. Here we have A and we have B. We're trying to find C. So 18 squared plus 7.5 squared equals C squared. So if we do 18 times 18, we get 324 plus 7.5 times 7.5, we get 56.25 equals C squared. So if we add these two together, we get 380.25 equals C squared. Find the square root. So the square root of 380.25 is going to give us 19.5. Now this next problem, our numbers didn't show up for some reason on this program, so I want you guys to try that one on your own. It should pop up on your screen, your notes, because we printed those out. Alright, so now we don't have a triangle, it's just asking us to find the unknown lengths. Now this first one, we don't know what a is, so we know that that's going to be a squared. B is 123, so 123 squared equals 139.4 squared. So 123 times 123, that's going to give us 15,129 equals 139.4 times 139.4 give us 19,432.36. So now we have to subtract the 15,000 from both sides. We get a squared equals, putting this in my calculator, we get 4,303.36. Find the square root of that. And we get a equals 65.8. Now the next one already has a square root sign, so a is actually the square root of 8 squared. B is 1 squared equals C squared. Now when I do the square root of, or if I square a square root, all those do is cancel the other two out, so what I'm left with is 8. Now 1 squared is 1 equals C squared. 8 plus 1 is 9. If I find the square root of C squared and the square root of 9, I get C equals 3. Now we need to identify right triangles. So the theorem is, if a triangle is a right triangle, then a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The converse, or the opposite of that, if a squared plus b squared equals c squared, then the triangle is a right triangle. So if a squared plus b squared do add up to equal c squared, then our triangle would be a right triangle. So we got to see if these numbers form a right triangle. So we have 6 squared plus 8 squared equals 10 squared. 6 squared is 36. 8 squared is 64. 10 squared is 100. 36 plus 64, that's going to give me 100. And 100 equals 100, so yes, this is a right triangle. Next one we have 10 squared plus 12 squared equals 16 squared. So 10 squared is 100 plus 12 squared, which is 144. And then 16 squared is 256. Now when I add up 100 and 144, I get 244 equals 256. Those don't equal each other, so this is not a right triangle. Last problem, we need to find x. Now, x is over here. If I wanted to find x from this triangle, I would need to know what the other two sides are. I only know what the hypotenuse is. I don't know what the other side is. But luckily we have another triangle down here. On that triangle we do know what two sides are. We know what the B is and the C. So we know the B and C of the other triangle. Once we figure out, once we put that into our Pythagorean theorem formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, we'll be trying to find a squared, which is going to help us find this side length. So we have a squared plus 6 squared equals 12 squared. So a squared plus 36 equals 144. We subtract 36. And a squared equals 108. Then if we find the square root of 108, a is going to equal 10.39. So now we found what a is. We found that this is 10.39. Now what we can do is use that to figure out our next problem, or our next side, or our x. So now we have 10.39. Actually, I'm going to erase what I just found, what I used to find this, so I can have some more room here. We can use 10.39 squared plus b squared equals 14 squared. Now 10.39 times 10.39 is going to equal 107.95 plus b squared equals 14 times 14, which is 196. subtract 107.95. And we get b squared equals 88.05. Square root of that gives me b equals 9.38. So x equals 9.38.